Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita as it is, chapter number 15, Yoga of the Supreme Person, and we're going to repeat text number 10. Utkramantam stitam bhavi
Utkramantam stitam bhavi
Gunjanam bhagunanvidam
Gunjanam bhagunanvidam
Vimudanam pashyanti
Vimudanam pashyanti
Pashyanti jnana-chakshusha
Pashyanti jnana-chakshusha
Utkramantam stitam bhavi
Utkramantam stitam bhavi
Gunjanam bhagunanvidam
Gunjanam bhagunanvidam
Vimudanam pashyanti
Vimudanam pashyanti
Pashyanti jnana-chakshusha
Pashyanti jnana-chakshusha
Utkramantam stitam bhavi
Utkramantam stitam bhavi
Gunjanam bhagunanvidam
Gunjanam bhagunanvidam
Vimudanam pashyanti
Vimudanam pashyanti
Pashyanti jnana-chakshusha
Pashyanti jnana-chakshusha Utkramantam stitam bhavi
Gunjanam bhagunanvidam Vimudanam pashyanti Pashyanti jnana-chakshusha. Face release.
Utkramantam stitam bhavi
Gunjanam bhagunanvidam Vimudanam pashyanti Pashyanti jnana-chakshusha. Utkramantam,
Utkramantam
putting the body.
in the body
Stitam,
Stitam
situated in the body.
in the body
Va-api,
Bhavi
Vaida. Gunjanam,
Gunjanam
enjoying.
Enjoying
Va,
Bhavi
guna-anvitam,
Gunanvidam
under the spell of the modes of material nature.
and the star of the spiritual nature
Vimudaha,
Buddha
foolish persons. Na,
now
never.
never
Anupasyanti,
100%
can see.
can see
Pasyanti,
Pasyanti
can see.
can see
Jnana-chakshusha,
Jnana-chakshusha
those who have the eyes of knowledge. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Please repeat. The foolish cannot understand
foolish cannot understand
how a living entity can quit his body,
how a living entity can quit his body,
nor can they understand
nor can they understand
what sort of body he enjoys
what sort of body he enjoys
under the spell of the modes of nature.
with the spell of the modes of nature.
But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge
One whose eyes are trained in knowledge
can see all this.
can see all this.
The word jnana-chakshusha is very significant. Without knowledge, one cannot understand how a living entity leaves his present body, nor what form of body he is going to take in the next life, nor even why he is living, in a particular type of body. This requires a great amount of knowledge, understood from Bhagavad-Gita and similar literatures, heard from a bona fide spiritual master. One who is trained to perceive all these things is fortunate. Every living entity is quitting his body under certain circumstances. He is living under certain circumstances, and he is enjoying under certain circumstances, under the spell of material nature. As a result, he is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress, under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power to understand their change of body and their stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. Those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body and is changing its body and enjoying in different ways. A person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. Therefore, those who are highly developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give this knowledge to the people in general, for their conditional life is very troublesome. They should come out of it and be Krishna conscious and liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world. Om Jnanatmirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshuranmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayham Dadati Svapadantikam Vandayaham Shri Guruho Shri Huta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sahagrijatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaudavakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Utkramantam stitam vapi gunjanam vagunan vitam vimuda nanupasyanti jnana chakshusha. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all of this. So I like this verse very much, so much that I read the whole purport last time I spoke last week. So we'll go through again, and then we'll speak more about this Jnana Chakshush, because it's, as we see here, this eyes trained in knowledge is the way to get out of this material entanglement. So, picking up from the purport, Prabhupada picks up the word Jnana Chakshusha. How if one is not knowledgeable, he has no chance of understanding. So, in the second chapter, this is quite elaborately explained. Of course, this Bhagavad-Gita is the book that Srila Prabhupada is talking about. This is how we get this knowledge. So, we can expect that the Bhagavad-Gita is going to be full of this knowledge and how to get it. So, Krishna is explaining those people who are too attached to come to knowledge. In chapter 2, text 42 to 43, he says, men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to the heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say there is nothing more than this. So in the name of the Vedas, people are still becoming entangled in this material life. And the following verse says it even more clearly, text number 44. Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam taya pahrita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samado navidiyate. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So we'll see this link, how this attachment to sense enjoyment keeps us in a material consciousness. We cannot get knowledge. We cannot possibly see that we're different from the body. Krishna then tells Arjuna to rise above these three modes of nature. Trigunya Vishaya Veda Nistrigunya Bhavarjana Nirdvanvo Nicha Sattvasto Niryoga Kshema Atmavan. The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxiety for gain and safety, and be established in the self. So this Vedas actually have a purpose to lead us to Krishna. But they do so for people according to their different qualifications. So for some people, the Vedas provide flowery words that promise them the things that they want. But this is a slow way of getting to the goal of the Vedas. Now, in everything we're talking about today, we'll find how important it is to know the goal. Here, Krishna says, all the purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. So the way the Vedas work is that for a person in a lower mode of nature, they give something that they can apply themselves to. So someone who is not very advanced cannot understand much at all, can hardly understand pious activities. But the Vedas give them a prescription so that they're following a regulative practice. It's a very slow way to come to realization, but it means that for those people who are in the lower modes, they're following an authority. So by actually following an authority, even though it's just to get what they want, they learn to trust an authority. And then gradually, when they become more elevated and they become more inquisitive to know more, in the beginning, their goal is simply to enjoy right now, right here and right now. And then they have a goal, okay, if I work hard now, I can get something in the future. And then they learn a bit more and gain a bit more faith, and they think, well, if I work hard now, I can get a better next life. And so gradually they can get more and more faith in the authority. And in that way the Vedas lead them gradually towards the highest goal, which is knowing Krishna. Which is in 15:15, coming up next week. Vedas to Sarvairahame Vedu. By all the Vedas I am to be known. He says, indeed, he's the compiler of the Veda and the knower of the Vedas. Okay. So Krishna goes on to give Arjuna advice. He says, O Dhananjaya, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. So this devotional service is being introduced as the way to get rid of this abominable work. This work that's binding us and this work that's stopping us from realizing anything. We have to first come to this realization that we should take up devotional service. And that's the importance of cultivating devotion, this transcendental knowledge. So a person engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions, even in this life. Therefore strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. So to get rid of good and bad reactions means that we can come beyond the material conception of life. Now later on in the second chapter, Arjuna asked the question about what is this person like who has a transcendental vision, who has the transcendental knowledge. So Krishna spends quite a lot of time talking about this person. He calls him Pragya Pratishta. He says in the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may attain, neither praising nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge, which is Pragya Pratishta. In the next verse, one who is able to withdraw his senses from the sense objects, as the tortoise withdraws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. And 61, one who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence. So this is important, this fixing the consciousness on Krishna, and that we can only do by achieving this transcendental knowledge. So in chapter 4 of Bhagavad-Gita, the title of the chapter is Transcendental Knowledge. The first 3 verses explain this parampara system, how Krishna originally spoke this science to the sun god Vivasvan, who handed it down to Manu, who handed it down to his son Ikshaku, and how in the course of time the science was lost. Evam parapraptam imam rajasyo viduhu sakale naha mahata yoga nashta parantapa. This supreme science was thus received through a chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in the course of time the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. That very science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as your friend, as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. So this point comes up again and again as well. Just learning knowledge is not sufficient. We have to come in to learn the transcendental part of the knowledge. And of course, that comes up in verse 9 of the 4th chapter. Janma karma chamev divyam evam yo veti tatvataha chaktvam deha punarmanma janma naiti mam eti sorajana. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not upon leaving the body take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So this, knowing the transcendental nature, is where we need to actually apply ourselves to this path of devotional service. Because simply to hear about Krishna is not sufficient. At the end of the 11th chapter, Krishna says he's shown the universal form. He's come back and shown the four-arm form and then the two-arm form. Even about the universal form, Krishna says on text 48, O best of the Kuru warriors, no one before has ever seen this form of mine, neither by studying the Vedas, nor by performing sacrifices, nor by charity, nor by pious activities, nor by severe penances can I be seen in this form in the material world. And then when Krishna shows his personal form, he again says, Naham Veda Nitapasa, Nadanena Nichejaya, Sakya Evam Vido Drashtavam Asimam Yata. The form you are seeing with your transcendental eyes cannot be understood simply by studying the Vedas, nor by undergoing serious penances, nor by charity, nor by worship. It is not by these means that one can see me as I am. So we can understand we're looking for transcendental knowledge. But what does this say? We're not going to find it by studying the Vedas. So this seems a little bit equivocal. We want transcendental knowledge. But the Vedas are handed down from Krishna. They must contain transcendental knowledge. But studying the Vedas is not the way to find it. So then Krishna says in text 44 of the 11th chapter, Bhaktya tvananyaya shakya aham eva vido arjuna gyatam drashtam tatvena praveshtam chaparantapa. My dear Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. So to learn the transcendental nature of Krishna and his appearance, about Krishna's different tattvas, about the different stories, we actually have to engage in this process of devotional service. And of course this is also given in this 4th chapter on transcendental knowledge. If we go a little later in this chapter, Krishna explains all different ways that people try to offer to him. He calls it a form of sacrifice, the sacrifice of transcendental knowledge. And then, so he's describing the different various ways. First he describes how action in karmic terms is not the same as activity. In fact, he says it's the opposite. He says, one who sees inaction in action and action in action is intelligent among men. He is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. So the point of understanding karma is not about understanding what you do or what you don't do. It's completely irrelevant. What action is in terms of karma is that which binds us, which basically means our attachment. So in the 20th verse, abandoning all attachment to the results of activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruit of action, although engaged in all kind of undertakings. So one who's on a transcendental platform, he acts. He doesn't cease to act, but he acts without attachment, without the desire for enjoyment. So then Krishna describes different ways a man will try and attain transcendental knowledge. Some yogis worship the demigods. Some offer sacrifices to the Supreme Brahman. Some control the hearing process in the fire of mental control. Some sacrifice the objects of the senses. Others offer the function of all the senses into the oblation of the fire of the controlled mind. But coming to the conclusion of this, Krishna says All these performers who know the meaning of the sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of the sacrifices, they advance towards the supreme eternal atmosphere. So this comes back to, Krishna's been describing so many different ways we can attempt for self-realization, but we can actually only come to the transcendental position if we understand this goal. This goal of the Vedas, Vedas to Sarvaira Hameva Vedu, is to know Krishna. And then the path is again given from 33 on. Krishna says, O chastise of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. After all, O son of Brita, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. And then Krishna gives us the way to attain transcendental knowledge. As we heard before, it's not by study of the Vedas. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. And this knowledge, for by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. And then Krishna goes on to keep glorifying transcendental knowledge. Even if you're considered the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you'll be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reaction to material activities. In this world there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has accomplished it in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge in himself in due course of time. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is able to achieve such knowledge, and having achieved it, it quickly attains supreme spiritual peace. So elsewhere, Krishna has explained how peace cannot be achieved by trying to fulfill the desires of your senses. He said, as the one who is at peace is like the ocean. So many rivers flow into the ocean, but the ocean is completely undisturbed. So in the same way, to come to the point of transcendental knowledge means to completely be unaffected by the senses. Everywhere through the Bhagavad-Gita, where this transcendental knowledge is being explained, the qualities of the person in transcendental knowledge is emphasized, that he is not disturbed by his senses and that he is controlled by his senses. And that process of controlling the senses is to engage in devotional service. In Bhagavad-Gita 259, it's called Param Drishtva Nivartate. If we engage in the process of devotional service, learning about Krishna and following the instructions of the spiritual master, then it becomes a higher taste, and we naturally lose any attraction for the lower taste. So this process of devotional service, we just learn approaching the spiritual master, inquiring from him submissively and rendering service unto him. So we'll go to the 7th chapter. 7:28. Yesham tvantagatam papam jnanam punyakarmanam taidvanvam no moham nirmukta bhajante mam dridavrataha. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of illusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So this detachment from material activities is required to engage in the service. And if we go to the following verse, intelligent persons. So, where's intelligent persons? Jara marana mukshaya mamasrita yatanti te brahma tadvidu krishnam adhyatmam karmachakilam. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in my devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities. So having taken to this path of devotional service, we have to become fixed in devotional service also. In the following verse it's called Yukta Chaitasaha. Those in full consciousness of me, who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of material manifestation, of the demigods and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, this personality Godhead, even at the time of death. So it says, Te vidu yukta chetasaha. Their minds are fully engaged in me, and therefore they know me. And this brings up the point of knowing Krishna at the time of death, which we know is important to understand our position, as Prabhupada said in today's purport, how the soul is different from the body and the soul is changing bodies. So this knowing Krishna at the time of the death is very important to learn how that we change bodies. Antakali cha mem eva smaran muktva kalevaram sa prayati samadbhavam yati yastyatcha samsayaha. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam jajantjante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kontaya sada tad bhavabhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So a few verses ago in this 15th chapter, this was also explained, how the living entity goes from one body to another, carrying the different conceptions of the life, like air carries aromas. And Krishna gives this type of, this analogy. So the subtle body that goes with the spirit soul to the next body, it leaves one body, the subtle body, which is the mind, intelligence and false ego. It carries these different conceptions of life, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body. So these conceptions of life carry us into the new body. So it's not just merely we can imagine something at the end of life, and therefore we'll get it. So we can think, I'm going to be, let me think, what do I want? I want to be a demigod in my next life. Let me think when I'm leaving my body, let me think of being a demigod, and it will happen. Because leaving the body is not so easy. And basically, even the material sciences has shown, the people who have gone through an experience of near death have described how at the time of when you're about to leave your body, or when you're close to leaving your body, what you remember is what's been filled up in your life, all the impressions that you've gained through your life, and even from previous lives. In the story of King Paranjana in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's explained there how even the dreams we have in this life are related to experiences in previous lives. So there's nothing that comes into our consciousness that we haven't had some attachment for, either in this life or in a previous life. We can dream some pretty weird things, but the consciousness puts different images together. So we might dream we're a person flying in the sky, but we might have been some other living entity flying in the sky and had that experience. So that's explained towards the end of the Paranjana story, how these dreams actually, for a devotee even, the dreams can work off our karma. So we don't need to be afraid of dreams, because And generally for a person, if they have karma to work off, they have to take a body to work off that karma, those desires. But when you come to Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada explains in that somewhere in that section how the dreams one have can actually work off the karma, and means that you don't have to go through those different bodies to work off the karma. You can actually get rid of it through the subtle body in dreams, because we're protected by remembering Krishna. We don't get lost in the dreaming state. Otherwise, at times the dreaming state is very dangerous. Like it said, you shouldn't go to sleep in the dusk time when Lord Shiva's ghosts and goblins are flying around. They might come and haunt you. Be careful when you go to sleep, your mouth's not open. That's how they enter your body. But when we take to devotional service, we don't have to worry about that, because we've got Krishna and the devotees looking after us. So where did we get to? Okay. So at the same time that other verses have said that it's not by studying the Vedas we can come to devotional service. There's a verse here in the 8th chapter, at the end of the 8th chapter. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft from the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all these, and at the end he reaches the supreme eternal abode. So the example is given how all these are achieved. Like by watering the root of a tree, we simultaneously satisfy all the leaves and all the branches and all the twigs. So all the results of studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, even giving in charity or pursuing fruitive activities are achieved by taking to devotional service, because it's directly watering the root of the tree. Or the other analogy that's given is feeding the stomach. Prabhupada gives an example. If your hand wants to enjoy the sweet you got on the Mahaprasad today, the hand by itself can't enjoy it. I was listening to one. The hand wants to take this fruit ball, but all it can do is make a mess. It can simply make a mess. It can't enjoy. And if it thinks, I'm going to take all these sweets and I'm going to keep them to myself and I'm not going to give them to the stomach, these are mine, I'm going to keep them. But gradually the hand will get weaker and weaker and weaker. And eventually it will have to work out that it feeds the stomach, and then it will also gain strength. So this transcendental knowledge, this knowledge of Krishna, again it's in the 10th chapter. We have what's called the Chatusloki of the Bhagavad-Gita, which explains the essential truths of the Bhagavad-Gita. Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartati iti matva bhajanti mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. So Bhakti-yoga Maharaj spoke about this samanvitaha in his class on Sunday. He says, Buddha bhava samanvitaha. Samanvitaha means with single pointed attention. It means the same as vyavasayatmika buddhi. Prabhupada translated as with great attention. So, I am the source of all spiritual material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So, having come to the point of transcendental knowledge, of understanding who Krishna is, and that he is the source of everything, and that he is our eternal friend, then the result is we come into devotional service. And not just idly, not just as a bypass, we take it with all our hearts. We come to devotional service with all our hearts. Mat chita mat kata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantas chamam nicham tushyanti cha ramanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are devoted for my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So this comes back to the essential points of engaging in devotional service. In the 4th chapter we had taking shelter of the spiritual master, inquiring from him and offering service from him. And then this one is pointing to the association of the devotees. Without the association of the devotees, actually we can't progress in devotional service at all. So all this is required to come to transcendental knowledge. And there's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vasudeve Bhagavati bhakti-yoga prayojita janayatya shivairagyam jnanam cha yadahaitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. So this transcendental knowledge comes as a result of devotional service. Doesn't mean we don't study at all. The process is that we study by hearing from the spiritual master, by hearing from the devotees, and maintaining the association of the devotees, service of the spiritual master. In the 9th chapter, this devotional service is also explained. 9:13. The devotees are explained. Mahatmanas tumam parta devim prakritim ashritaha bhajantyananya manaso yatvam bhutadim avyayam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So the same thing that was in that 10.8. Because they know Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible, they are fully engaged in devotional service. And the other thing in this verse for Srimati Radharani, Devim Prakritim Ashritaha, they take shelter of the divine nature, which is the nature under Srimati Radharani. Satatam kirtayantamam yatantas chadradavrittaha namasyantas tamam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Always chanting my glories, engaging with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. And so this is the devotional service. The path of devotional service is dependent on transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge is dependent on our engagement in devotional service. And having achieved that, we can see how we change bodies, how we attain a certain body, why we attain a certain body. And in doing that, as Burijan remarked on that verse I spoke on last week, in understanding this, then we can make a choice to not remain attached in this material world. At verse 7, Mama vamsa jiva loka jiva bhuta sanatana mana shashtan indriyani prakriti stani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. So Burijan in Surrender unto Me suggested that because the mind is stressed here, mana shashtan indriyani, it gives us the clue that the mind is the cause of our entanglement, as Prabhupada says in the purport, but it is also the way by which we can begin to come out of it. So here again in today's verse, the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he understands and enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But those whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all of this. So the importance of taking up devotional service and actually gaining transcendental knowledge, not just book knowledge, but transcendental knowledge, by the process of devotional service. Okay, so does anyone have any comments or questions in relation to today's class? Hare Krishna.
If someone is doing devotional service sincerely,
try putting it on the side a little bit. Yeah, something, so it's not facing the speaker.
Devotional service he is doing very sincerely, and still he is attached with his family. So, what is his destiny? He leaves his body, and then what is his destiny? And when he dies and if he gets some other birth, can he remember that he was doing very nice devotional service and he was attached to his family? So can this, just like the Jat Bharat remembered in dear body, can this person remember in other body that I was doing devotional service and I was attached to family, that's why I have got this birth, and maybe Lord will be merciful and give him some opportunity to remember him again?
Well, so most of us are not on the stage of Maharaj Bharat. So we don't expect to remember like he did. I mean, even in the deer's body, he remembered why he was a deer. But Krishna does promise that this devotional service will come back to us at the end of the 6th chapter. Arjuna asked this question. He says, if a person takes up devotional service and he's not successful, then what happens? Has he not lost everything? And Krishna replies, this is the beginning of his reply. Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Son of Pritha, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities, does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. For one who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. So Krishna goes on to explain that a person who leaves his body without having completed devotional service, nothing is lost. Even in the 2nd chapter, says there is no loss or diminution by taking up this path. The unsuccessful yogi, after many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or a family of rich aristocracy. Or if after a long practice of yoga, he takes birth in a family of transcendentalists. And then Krishna is reinforcing that it's not lost. It's not that he remembers exactly how he got there, but Krishna says, on taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Guru. So of course, we can become very reflective, and we can look at some of these young devotees who are born into Krishna conscious families. So we know from this part of the Bhagavad-Gita, they've had devotional service in their previous lives, and they're coming back to perfect it. Now some of them are still struggling with issues. They're not all pure devotees. They don't all suddenly remember, wow, I'm a devotee and I'm going to perfect my life this time. Some of them take some time to get there. So it's not automatic. It depends how much our attachments are. You mentioned attachment for family. So attachment for family can be transformed into Krishna consciousness by helping our family advance in Krishna consciousness. If we take the attitude, Prabhupada said no matter who you're looking at, whether you're in the temple, you're responsible for other devotees, or whether you're in a family, or whether it's a husband or a wife or a child, if you look at this other person as a devotee, and you think my duty is to serve this devotee, then that service becomes Krishna consciousness, no matter how mundane it is. So we can be attached to our family, but we can turn that attachment into Krishna consciousness. We can be attached to our family and struggle with the attachment. So there's no simple answer to that. But the gain that's made by engaging in devotional service is never lost. The biggest things that can come into our favor is taking shelter of the spiritual master, surrendering unto him, and the association of the devotees. Because if we leave that aside, then it's very easy for the false ego to carry us away, and our advancement will be much less. Still, what we've gained will never be lost, but we can get sidetracked for a long time. Anything else? Anybody? At the back. Prabhu, at the back. You have to turn down.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much for witness. I would like to ask how to get rid of the crooked mind.
How to get rid of the crooked mind. Wouldn't we all like to know the answer to that question? So Krishna also gives that example in the 6th chapter. He says it's possible by suitable practice and detachment. So simply our process is to engage in devotional service under the guidance of the senior devotees, Siksha Guru, Diksha Guru. And the most important thing to control the mind is to never give up the association of devotees. Because if we let our mind, it will give us all sorts of reasons why we should leave the association of the devotees. Oh, they're all in Maya, they're not serious, like this. Our mind can imagine all sorts of things, and it can take us away from the association of devotees. But that's the biggest danger. I was listening today to one class from Mahatma. He was talking about not offending the devotees. And he said, what we actually have to do is to learn to love the devotees that we don't like. We have to step out of our false ego. We have to learn that the false ego is not us, that the mind is not us, the mind is material. And the mind says this devotee is not serious, but actually that's what the mind does. The mind thinks, I'm the only one who's serious and everyone else is not serious. But actually, if we step away from the false ego and take a little time to think, we realize that we all have faults. I have faults. We have faults ourselves. Other people also have faults. And but genuinely, everybody is sincerely trying to engage in the process. Of course, everybody also gets sidetracked by their own false ego from time to time. But we have to learn to love people, including their faults, because that's actually quite freeing. Because if we can have the courage to love people with their faults, then we'll stop worrying about if people see our faults or not. Because if we can love people with faults, then other people can love us, even though we've got faults. So it takes away all this fear. And this fear is the root cause of enviousness. So if we stop trying to cover up our faults and just be honest and admit to them, and learn to appreciate others, they also have faults. I was doing a presentation in Melbourne on humility, and there was a nice little cartoon that came up. It was about relationships between two people. It said, there was one man talking to his wife. Yes, of course I have faults too, but they don't annoy me like yours do. So this is the nature of the false ego. We know we've got faults, but we think then that we're sincere, the faults are just a mistake. But other people know they're terrible. So we have to recognize this false ego, and we have to control and say, no, this isn't the way it is. Everybody has faults, but everybody is genuinely sincere. And our only hope for getting rid of this mad mind is to keep the association of the devotees. All of them, not pick and choose and just say, I like this. Of course, we have to keep our distance from some who are envious, but still we can respect them. And we can still offer our respects and treat them nicely and treat them with compassion, and don't treat them out of envy. Even if they're treating us out of envy, we shouldn't retaliate and treat them out of envy, because we should understand we can take Prabhupada's vision. The more you learn about Prabhupada and how much he tried so very hard to engage everybody in devotional service. There's one quote that came up last week. He said, understand that there's nothing material that can stop anybody from coming to Krishna consciousness. So therefore you should make everybody welcome and give everybody the opportunity to come to Krishna consciousness. So if we really see that there's no material bar to Krishna consciousness, then we will not try and keep anyone away from Krishna consciousness. They may not become our best friend, but we should always be kind to them and try and give them the opportunity to advance in Krishna consciousness. Help them to go ahead, and don't just keep them down so that we look better. It's a struggle, but we have to recognize the mind and the activities of the false ego. Any other comments or questions? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You were telling about the dream and devotees karma getting on now.
Yes.
Can you please explain that?
Yes, so Prabhupada mentions that in this, towards the end of the story of King Baranjana, I think when Narada Muni is explaining, Prabhupada mentions in one of those purports, I'm not sure that I bookmarked it, but he actually mentions that for the devotees, a dream can work off karma. Like if something bad experience happens to us in a dream, we don't actually have to go through the bad experience in life. Where's my marks? Oh, here we go. Okay, here's the verse. I don't know which chapter it is. It's verse number 69. Krishna consciousness means constantly associating with the Supreme Personality Godhead in such a mental state that the devotee can observe the cosmic manifestation exactly as the Supreme Personality Godhead does. Such observation is not always possible, but it becomes manifested exactly like the dark planet known as Rahu, which is observed in the presence of the full moon. Now where's a bit about dreams? Okay. Why we see things not experienced in this life is explained herein. That which we see is the future expression of a gross body, or is already stocked in our mental stockpile. Because a Krishna conscious person does not have to accept a future gross body, his recorded desires are fulfilled in a dream. We therefore sometimes find things in a dream never experienced in our present life. So here Prabhupada is saying not only it's our past activities, it's our future desires that are also stockpiled and come to us as dreams. So we don't actually have to take birth to try and fulfill those desires, because we can do it in a dream.
Actually, Mataji, my personal experience is if your sadhana is good that day, you sleep peacefully. And if you are engaged in more of material activities and you are agitated, then some dream comes up.
Yes. Yeah, that's there. The dreams will come, and sometimes they will be disturbing. But Prabhupada said here it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going into Maya. It can be just that we're working off some of our material desires. Like when our sadhana is good, our material desires are less obvious, but they're still in our heart. So Prabhupada is saying that if they then manifest in dreams, it may not be that we have to actually take a body to express them, because that's how they're being burnt up. And because when we take to devotional service, all our resultant sins are burnt up, but we experience some of them in dreams. Nothing more than that I can say, because it's only in this place that Prabhupada actually mentioned it. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much everybody. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad-Gita ki jai.